Okay, so it looks like you guys are having a lot of trouble with slope. So I wanted to do a mini lesson on slope. Slope is the steepness of a line. Okay, how steep is a line? There are four types of slope. There's positive, that's when your line rises. There's negative, that's when your line falls. There's zero, that's whenever your line is horizontal. And there's undefined, and that is when your line is vertical. Okay, so there's a lot of things that we can do with slope. We cannot plot slope, but we can use slope to graph a line. Okay, so in order to do that, if we want to graph a line, we need one point, and if we can get the y-intercept, that's great. Okay, and I'm going to show you how to find that. And we also need the slope. Okay, so if we can have one point and we can have the slope, then we can graph a line. So let's talk just a little bit more about slope. Okay, slope, we say, is the rise. We use a little m. Okay, it's the rise over the run. Now, when we talk about the rise, we're talking about the y-axis, and that axis goes up and it goes down. Okay, so your rise is your y, and then your run is your x-axis, and that axis goes right and left. So that slope tells me a ratio between how many I go up or down, and then how many I go right or left to keep on that line. Okay, so let's look at some slope here just for a second. So I'm going to draw a coordinate plane, and I'm going to plot 2 points on that plane. Okay, so here's my y-axis. That's always my y. It's always vertical. Here's my x-axis. So let's suppose that I have this point right here, and let's pick this point right here. Okay? So if I have the line that goes through those 2 points right there, okay, it's close enough, I can tell you a few things about that line. I can tell you the y-intercept, it's right here, because this is where the graph crosses the y-axis, and that is at the point, start off at the origin, go down, so 1, 2, 3, so that's at the point 0, -3, and that is the y-intercept. Okay, I can also tell you the slope, because if I have 2 points on a line, I can draw a triangle between those 2 points. And so to travel from, let's say, the blue point up to the black point, I would have to go up, and then I would go right. So I'd have to go up 1, 2, that's my rise. And then I'd have to go right 1, 2, that's my run. Okay, my run's 2. So the slope of this line, my rise is 2, my run is 2, so the slope is 1. So I've got a lot of information just from looking at that one picture. I've got my slope, I've got my y-intercept. I can actually write the line out now, okay? And I can write it in what's called the slope intercept form. Slope intercept. That's y equals mx plus b. Now in that form, the y-intercept right here, that's the b. So for this line, the b would be -3. And in this form, the m right here, that's the slope. We just found that, the rise and the run. So if I substitute those two values into that equation, I can tell you with certainty that the equation for this line that's graphed on the page would be y equals, let me erase that. Okay, it would be y equals 1x minus 3. Or in math terms, we wouldn't write that 1 right there. mathematicians are a little lazy. We want to write the least amount as possible. And so the equation for this line would be y equals x minus 3. So this equation right here is a great equation. If you can isolate the y, you can graph any line. Okay, any line. So let's try one more line, and we're going to try graphing it. So let me get my coordinate plane back drawn on here. Here's my x-axis. Here's my y-axis. Okay, so this time I'm going to start with the equation. So I'm going to make my equation y equals negative 3/4 x plus 2. Okay, so let's say they give me that equation and they say, okay, can you graph it? Sure, I can give you a lot of information just from looking at that equation. I can tell you that the slope of this line right here, it's the multiplier times the x, is negative 3/4. I can also tell you that the y-intercept of this line, that's the b, is 2. Okay, so I can tell you those two things. Now, I always think of the b as the beginning. That's where you want to begin your line. That's the beginning point. So I'm going to put, I'm going to start at the origin, and I'm going to go up 2 because I have to be on the y-axis. So right there at 2, there's the b. Okay, it's at 2. And now I'm going to find another point on that line. Okay, the y-intercept is plottable. I can find it. It's 2. And so now I'm going to use the slope to graph the line. Okay, if you notice that my slope is negative, and you have to go back to fractions to remember this. If I have a fraction that's negative, then that means that the negative was in the numerator or in the denominator. Okay, because a negative divided by a positive is negative. So what I'm going to do, because that negative has to commit. It either has to be in the top or in the bottom. So I usually always let it just stay in the top. Okay, so I'm going to treat my rise as negative 3, and my run is going to be positive 4. So since my rise is negative, that means that I'll be going downward. And since my run is positive, that means I'll be going to the right. So from the beginning point, I need to go down 3. So 1, 2, 3. And right 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I land on a second point on my line. And so now I can draw the line, which is the line y equals negative 3/4 x plus 2. And if you notice, that line's going downward. And a while ago, I talked about the 4 types of slope. And so since this one's going downward, we know that it has a negative slope. And of course it does, because we can look at our m right there. And our m is negative 3. So I hope this helps you guys understand slope a little bit more. And gives you a chance, and you can watch that next. I'm going to try to make one more video. Okay.